joining us at Mount Zion Missionary Baptist Church, where our pastor is Dr. W.L. Johnson Sr. We're so grateful that you spend this time of worship with us each week, and we ask that you continue to spread the word of God by sharing this video. And also, have a blessed week.
How to reach the mass men of every bird. For an answer, Jesus gave the key. Oh, if I only trust him, do not doubt the words that he said. He said, I'll draw all men unto me. Oh, you know the world is hungry for the living bread. If the Savior only for men to see. Oh, if I only trust him, do not doubt the words that he said. He said, I'll draw all men unto me. Oh, you know God said, if I walk right, God said, if I talk right, God said, if I live right, God said, if I give right, I'll draw, I'll draw, I'll draw. He said, I'll draw, he said, I'll draw all men unto me. Oh, you know God said, if I walk right, God said, if I talk right, God said, if I live right, God said, if I give right, I'll draw, I'll draw, I'll draw. He said, I'll draw all men unto me. Oh, I wonder who, I wonder who, saints, will you, preachers, will you, I want you to lift him, come on and lift him, come on and lift him, higher, 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 I'll draw all men unto me. Oh, you know God said, if I walk right, God said, if I talk right, God said, if I live right, God said, if I give right, I'll draw, I'll draw, I'll draw. He said, I'll draw all men unto me. Oh, I wonder who, saints, will you, preachers, will you, I want you to lift him, come on and lift him, come on and lift him, come on and lift him, lift him, come on and lift him, come on and lift him, come on and lift him, higher, 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 I'll draw all men unto me.
Zion Finance Committee has made it possible for you to give your tithes and offerings by mail, online at the church's website at www.mountziononline.org, and in person on Sundays from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m.
Greetings to my Mount Zion Missionary Baptist Church family. Please indulge me for a few minutes while I talk on Tired of Quarantine? Let's talk about the coronavirus vaccine. Now, it's no secret to us that the coronavirus is certainly a major issue. As of January 29th, our state had 274,190 total cases of the coronavirus. As of January the 29th, our state has logged 6,800 deaths from the coronavirus. What's even more astounding, if we look at deaths from the coronavirus by race, we will find that as African Americans, we account for nearly 50% of lives lost from the coronavirus. What's so amazing about that is, as African Americans, we only make up 37 to 38% of the population of the state of Mississippi. So not only is this pandemic a growing problem, it's also a deadly problem. So let's look at why vaccines are so important anyway. God has blessed us with a very important system called the immune system. The immune system is always on the lookout for enemies. In this case, our enemy is a virus. Once the immune system recognizes an enemy, it takes a picture of it and it studies this picture, and then it develops the perfect weapon, something called an antibody, that is able to destroy the enemy. When our immune system sees a new enemy for the first time, it takes it a little bit of time to study the enemy and then to get the perfect weapon produced. And so during this time, while our immune system is working on producing the perfect weapon, the enemy can make us sick. It can start multiplying, invading our systems, and it can cause us to become very, very ill. And so what we want to do then is to eliminate the lag time. And the lag time is simply the amount of time that it takes our immune system to study a new enemy and to produce the perfect weapon that helps to destroy the enemy. Now let's look at how the coronavirus vaccine actually works. By now, we have probably all seen this image of the coronavirus a million times, but I would like to point out the red spiky things. We call these spike proteins. The spike protein is what the coronavirus uses to invade the membranes within our nose. These spike proteins are what allow the coronavirus to invade our cells and thus enter our bodies and make us sick. The coronavirus vaccine is something called an mRNA vaccine. mRNA is simply a blueprint or a set of instructions that teaches our cells how to make that red spiky spike protein that we were just talking about. So then, how does the coronavirus vaccine really help us? Well, with the coronavirus vaccine, it causes our cells to make the spike protein. The immune system recognizes the spike protein as an enemy, and so then it starts working on preparing the perfect weapon called the antibody to eliminate the enemy. Fortunately, our immune system has an excellent memory. It does not forget anything. And so then, if it sees the real coronavirus enter our systems down the road, it already has the perfect weapon form, the antibody, and it can release that weapon immediately to destroy the enemy before it makes us sick. So then, how does the coronavirus vaccine help us? Well, let's go back to what we said initially. We said how wonderful the immune system is in protecting us from enemies. However, when our immune system sees a brand new enemy for the first time, it takes it a little bit of time to create the perfect weapon called the antibody to destroy the enemy. While the immune system is working on developing this perfect weapon, our enemy can take over. There are presently 2 vaccines approved to date Both are mRNA vaccines. The first vaccine to hit the market was the Pfizer vaccine, and it was followed by the Moderna vaccine. Both the Pfizer and the Moderna vaccine require 2 injections. With the Pfizer vaccine, the second injection usually occurs roughly around 21 days after the first injection. With the Moderna vaccine, the second injection usually needs to occur about 28 days after the first injection. Both the Pfizer and the Moderna vaccine both work equally well. They are both roughly 95% effective in preventing both mild and severe symptoms from the coronavirus. Let's look at potential side effects. The first thing to emphasize is that because these vaccines are new, we require that you wait 15 minutes after your injection to make sure that there will be no early signs of a severe allergic reaction. Generally speaking, if a severe allergic reaction is to occur, it generally will occur within the first 15 minutes of the injection. Some potential findings of a severe allergic reaction can be rash, itchy red, swollen, or peeling skin, tightness in the chest or throat, trouble breathing, swallowing, or talking, swelling of the mouth, face, lips, tongue, or throat, fast or slow heartbeat, passing out. Again, these symptoms of a severe allergic reaction fortunately have been very rare with these vaccines thus far. There's also a risk of some less concerning side effects, and these less concerning side effects can include pain, redness or swelling where the injection was given, headache, muscle or joint pain, low-grade fever, generally around 100.4. Sometimes it can be a little higher, sometimes a little lower than that. Chills, upset stomach, feeling tired. Not everyone has these side effects. From what we are seeing thus far, those of us that are under 40 tend to be at higher risk for some of these less concerning side effects. The same holds true for my household. When I received the first dose of my injection, I had a little fatigue as well as a headache. My parents had received the first dose of their vaccine and they had no symptoms whatsoever. And so it does seem that younger people tend to have more symptoms than older. However, if any symptoms generally occur, they're usually these less concerning side effects. Now let's look at a few questions concerning the coronavirus vaccine. Our first question, can the coronavirus vaccine cause the coronavirus? No, the coronavirus vaccine cannot in any way cause the coronavirus. Why is that? Well, this whole thing is the coronavirus. With the vaccine, we are only making the red spiky part called the spike protein. Because we are not causing our system to make the whole thing, there is no way that just the spiky protein part of it could cause us to become ill with the coronavirus. Now, although the vaccine in no way can cause us to develop the coronavirus, it is possible to be exposed to the coronavirus right before you receive the vaccination, and it's also possible to be exposed to the coronavirus while waiting for the body to produce the weapons known as the antibody against the coronavirus. Our second question, if I receive the coronavirus vaccine, then it will completely eliminate any chance of me getting the coronavirus, right? No, it does not completely eliminate the chance, though it will drastically lower the likelihood. Well, why does it not completely eliminate the chance? How well the vaccine works depends upon the immune system of the individual. Elderly individuals tend to have a weaker immune system. There are also certain conditions that can weaken the response of our immune systems, such as diabetes, heart disease, lung disease, lupus, HIV, AIDS, and cancer. And so then, those who have weakened immune systems may not mount as vigorous as a response against the vaccine. Still, it does not mean that the vaccine does not have any impact. It is still helpful even with those whose immune systems are a little weaker at baseline. Our next question: after I receive the vaccine, all of this will be over and I can stop wearing my mask and go back to life as usual, right? Not yet. In order to go back to what we are more accustomed to, we really need to achieve something called population, also known as herd immunity. The reason why the coronavirus pandemic has reached the present proportions that it has is simply because a lot of people are not wearing masks, they are not social distancing, and they are not avoiding crowds. Because of that, the coronavirus has had all sorts of opportunity to spread. The coronavirus cannot make it without us. It needs a host to be able to survive. Once it no longer has the host that it needs, it dies off because it is difficult for it to survive a long time without a host. And so then, what happens with this population immunity, also known as herd immunity, is simply this. When people start becoming immune to the coronavirus, secondary to the vaccine, then it blocks the ability of the coronavirus to spread and infect a lot of people. And so, because all of this is still so new, we still do not know exactly what percentage of Americans will need to be vaccinated to ensure herd immunity. But as best we know now, it needs to be perhaps above 70% of the American population. We must be mindful that there are some people, secondary to underlying conditions, secondary to various treatments that they are on, that will not be able to take the vaccine. And so then, the more of us that are vaccinated will help to protect those individuals that, number one, cannot take the vaccine for various reasons, and then number two, that can take the vaccine but will not have as robust of an immune response to the vaccine, secondary to their age or underlying conditions. Our next question: what about the new variants that we are hearing about? We've been hearing a lot about the UK variant as well as the South African variant. These new variants seem to have changed the spike protein to some extent, in that with the new variants, the spike protein now tends to be a little bit stickier. In that way, with the spike protein being stickier, it becomes even easier for the coronavirus then to enter our cells and start dividing and making us sick. And so because the spike protein of these new mutations is stickier, then it does make these variants of the coronavirus more contagious. Also, early evidence seems to suggest that these newer variants may be more easily transmitted from person to person. It is still too early to know if these new variants will be more deadly. But what is concerning, because these new variants are more contagious, that means that is the potential for more people to become very ill. And if more people become very ill, then certainly the chances are higher for more deaths. Now, what about our vaccines? How do our available vaccines stack up against these two new variants? Time will tell. Early evidence has suggested that the Pfizer and the Moderna vaccine are effective against the UK variant. We're not yet certain about the South African variant as of yet. Fortunately, vaccines are not an all or none phenomenon. Some protection is better still than no protection, and early evidence has indicated that we may get up to 50% protection even with the South African variant with the Moderna and Pfizer vaccines as they stand now. Ultimately, it is not surprising to see variants with a virus like the coronavirus, because over time, this is what viruses do. They switch it up a little bit. One of the biggest things that we can do to slow down on these variants is to block the spread of the coronavirus by wearing our masks, socially distancing, and avoiding crowds. If the coronavirus cannot go to person and replicate, then it cannot mutate. And so stopping the transmission of the coronavirus will slow down on the development of these mutations, also known as variants. A couple of closing questions. How did the vaccine come about so quickly to begin with? Well, in order to make a vaccine, you first have to know what the enemy, in this case the coronavirus, actually looks like. Because the first cases of the coronavirus occurred in China, some astute research scientists there had already put in the hard work in discovering how the coronavirus actually looked, something called its genetic sequence. And these researchers so graciously made their hard work available free of charge to anyone interested. And so because they had already figured out the genetic sequence, this was a big leap forward in vaccine development. The other thing that can slow vaccine development is the lack of funding. But with the coronavirus pandemic being a public health emergency, the government made a good bit of funding available so that the developers could have all the resources they needed to quickly work on producing the vaccine. Lastly, red tape can slow down vaccine development. But again, because the coronavirus is a public health emergency, the government removed a good bit of that red tape. And so all of these things together allowed the vaccine to come about in short order. Now, why did they decide to use an mRNA vaccine, which has never been used before? Even though the coronavirus vaccine is indeed the first mRNA vaccine, research scientists have been studying mRNA vaccine technology for years. And so even though it's new, it's not unknown. With a pandemic like the coronavirus pandemic, we needed the quickest way possible of being able to largely produce vaccines. mRNA technology allows for quicker production of vaccines in relation to some of the other vaccine technology that is available. And so they went with the mRNA vaccine because they had studied it for years, and they do deem it to be safe, and it allows for relatively quick production of vaccines. In closing, I would like to leave us with Hebrews 11:1. Now faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. For me personally, my decision to proceed with taking the coronavirus vaccine was certainly a faith journey. Several weeks before the first vaccines became available, my employer had started polling us as to who would be interested in taking the vaccine. I must admit, initially I did have some hesitation, but I took it to the Lord in prayer. And what was revealed to me by the Spirit is that individually and collectively, we have been praying for the end of this pandemic for months. And so then, what was revealed to me, if God has allowed this vaccine to be made available, why then would we pray for the pandemic to end and then not receive what he has given us to help us end it? And so once that became obvious to me, I then decided to proceed and receive the vaccine. I have now received both doses, and I'm still here to tell about my experience. And I must say, receiving the vaccine made me even more appreciative that God has given us this, because once I think about all those that have been hospitalized with severe manifestations of COVID-19, all those lives lost, I consider myself blessed to be able to receive the vaccine and still be among the living. And so, yes, the vaccine is certainly a faith journey, but I would like to submit this as well. Whenever we open a bottle of Tylenol or a bottle of Aleve, or if we go to the pharmacy and get a prescription medicine, that's a faith journey as well, in that we never know what's going on at the factory where these medicines are produced. Perhaps something could have happened to tamper with the medicine that escaped the quality control system at the factory. Everything that we do is a faith journey. And so to me, the coronavirus vaccine is a faith journey, just like prescription medications, over-the-counter medications, and some of everything else. We have to trust God with it, leave it in his hands, and trust him with the outcome. Lastly, which groups are presently able to receive the vaccine? All healthcare workers and EMT paramedics, persons 65 years of age or older, and persons 18 to 64 years of age with underlying medical conditions as follows: cancer, chronic kidney disease, COPD, Down syndrome, heart conditions such as heart failure, coronary artery disease, or cardiomyopathies, those that have had organ transplants, obese individuals, pregnant women, sickle cell disease, smoking, diabetes, or other medical conditions as determined by your medical provider. Lastly, if anyone is interested in scheduling an appointment for the vaccine, I have included the website covidvaccine.umc.edu as well as the phone number. I hope this has been helpful. I love everyone, and I'm looking forward to being reunited as soon as God allows. Until then, take care and be safe.
For so long I was silent, and for so long I did not have a song of praise. Depression filled my days, and clouds blocked my way, but there was a voice speaking to me, awaking the passion so silent in me, in me. so still in me, but I made up my mind. I choose to. Oh, yes, I did, Lord. I can't lay here and give up, no. I choose to worship you right now. My mind is made up. Is that your voice calling me into that secret place with thee? My heart is long for this moment with thee. I choose to. I know sometimes things get bad. Oh, I choose to worship you. Oh, yes, I do. I've already made up my mind. I just can't give up. No. Come on, church, let's make a declaration on today to choose to worship God. No matter what's going on in your life, no matter what circumstances surround you, no matter who turned their backs on you, no matter who walked away, no matter what they said about you, you have to make up your mind to worship him in spirit and in truth. I bless your name. I glorify you right now. I'm desperate for your presence, God. I'm coming after you. Ooh, yeah. He's healing me. I'm gonna worship. Can anybody say that on this morning? He's healing you right now. Oh, Lord. Come on, sometimes you have to pick yourself up out of that mess that you're in and say, He's healing me. Oh, He's healing me. Yeah. He's healing you right now. Come on, sometimes you have to press through your mess because God can heal you. He's healing me. I'm gonna worship. Oh, He's healing me, yeah. He's healing me. He's healing me, oh yeah. I'm gonna worship. Oh, He's healing me, yeah. And this is why I'm going to worship God on this morning. Yes, I am. I'm going to worship. I've got a made up mind to worship the Lord at all times. I'm going to worship. No matter what they say about me, I'm gonna worship. I'm gonna worship you. Oh, come on and bless his name. I love the Lord. He heard my cry and he pitied every one of my groans. Long as I live while trouble rise, I'm gonna hasten until my God's throne. On Christ, the solid rock I stand. All other ground is sinking sand. I'm gonna worship you. Oh yeah, yeah. My heart is long for this moment with thee. I choose to worship, yeah.
Found message, and I want to say to all of you who heard this message today, I want to ask you a question. Are you saved? The greatest tragedy that anybody could have at this day and time is to die and not have a relationship with Jesus Christ. The coronavirus is not the greatest tragedy. The greatest tragedy is to die and not have a relationship with Jesus Christ. We extend an invitation to you. If you are not saved, God gave his only son, Jesus, and Jesus gave his life on Calvary, that whosoever will believe in him will not perish, but have everlasting life. All you have to do is to believe in God, believe in Jesus Christ, believe that he is Jesus, the Son of God, and believe that he died for your sin. And the Bible said, thou shalt be saved. We extend you an invitation. If you are not saved, we're going to ask that you will call my number 601-859-4267, and we will be glad to accept your confession. Maybe you are out of fellowship with the church and you need to renew your membership. We also invite you, just give us a call. We'll be glad to talk with you. Or maybe you're in this community and you don't have a church home and you're looking for a church home. Just give us a call.
To the new safety standards, we encourage everyone to stay safe and healthy by practicing social distancing, staying at least 6 feet apart from other individuals, and washing and sanitizing your hands for at least 20 seconds. On social media for church news and more. Thank you for worshiping with us.